Yeah, it's hard to find. And it's never done in English.
Oh, no, sorry. That's right. Yeah.
Pallbearers?
Hi.
Pallbearers, take your place. Pallbearers, take your place.
And that's why it's called.
יושב בסתר, עליון בצל שדי תלונן, אומר לאדוני, מחסי ומצודתי לא אבטח בו, כי הוא יצחק מפח יכוש מדבר ההוא. בעברתו יחסך לך, בתחת כנפיו תחסה צינם, בצוחרם עמיתום, לא תירא מפחד לילה, מחץ יעוף יומם, מדבר בעפול יהלוך, מכתר ישוט צהריים, יפול מצדכם אלף ורבבם, מימינכם אליכם, לא ייגש רק בינך תביט, וישולמן ראשים תיראם, כי אתם אדוני מחסי עליון, שמתם מהונחם, לא תונן אליך רם, ונגם לא יקרב בהלכם, כי מלאבם יצווים לך, לשמרך בכל דרכיו, מדבר באופל יחלוף, מכתף ישוט צהריים, יפול מצדכם, ניצבים לך לשמרך בכל דרכיך לא תהוני אליך רע ונגלו יקרב בהלכה. Al Makamot Yavo Shalom. May Bernie Narvey go unto God in peace. Recital of Psalm 23. I'll recite it in Hebrew first and then repeat it in English. Mizmor David Adonai Rolo Exah Binot Shel Yarbitzeni Al Menuchat Yanachalani Nafshi Yoshev Yanachini B'maglet Tzedek L'man Shemo Gam Ki Elech B'getz Al Mavet Lo Ira Ra Ki Ata Imadi Shriftecha U'mishantecha Hema Yinachamuni Taroch Lofanai Shulchan Neged Tzararai Dishanta Vashem et Roshi Kosir Vayam Ach Tov Chesed Yedefuni Kol Yemei Chayam V'shavti B'beit Adonai Le'orech Yam. The Lord is my shepherd, I am not in want. He makes me lie down in green meadows. He leads me beside refreshing streams. He restores my life. He guides me by righteous paths. Even though I walk through the darkest valley, I fear no harm, for He is with me. Your staff and your rod, they comfort me. You spread a feast for me in the presence of my foes. You anoint my head with oil, my cup overflows. Only goodness and kindness shall follow me all the days of my life, and I shall dwell in the house of the Lord forever. Life is very much a matter of history. A word that if you divide it in two words, it says his story. The truth is that every one of us is kind of an author. Daily, we compose another page in a book known as our life. Ordinarily, we are not aware of this process. Life is something that happens to us while we are busy making other plans. It's at moments like these that we can take time to ask the truly important questions. Do we like the way our life stories are turning out? If not, how might we change the plot of our personal book? And what might be required of us to make these changes a reality? Self-awareness is one of the most precious gifts that life or death can ever bestow upon us. Now we are here today to say goodbye to Bernie Narvey. His Hebrew name was Yehuda Dov ben Menachem Shimon Esther, the son of Menachem Shimon and Esther. Before I begin, I'll give you a small snippet of the conversation that I had with his family. He loved music. One of his favorite composers was Leonard Cohen. And I suggested that Psalm 150, which I'm sure you all know, I can chant it in Hebrew. And they agreed. So here is the first tribute to him and his life. I was also going to invite you to sing along during the refrain. I think he would be pleased. Hallelujah, Bekocho, Hallelujah, bekiauzo. Hallelujah, vigavurato. Hallelujah, kerov gudlo. Hallelujah, beteka shofar. Hallelujah, benevel vechinor. Please join. Hallelujah, 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 betovu machol, hallelujah, beminim ve'ogam, hallelujah, betzilzelei shamam. Hallelujah, betziltre trua, kolan shamate, hallelujah, kolan shamate, hallelujah, 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 hallelujah. Thank you so much. Bernie passed away way too soon. He was the husband of Barbara Scherer, father to Emma Esther Narvey, her partner Mariana Riboli, brother to Roberta Kravitz, her husband Fred, Carol Hoffman, Martin Tadman, and partner Lorena Harris. He was predeceased by his parents, Melvin and Esther, his stepmother Suki Narvey, his sister Sandy Narvey, his brother-in-law Larry Hoffman, and his stepbrother Arthur Tadman. Bernie passed away on Friday, August the 6th, which is equivalent to the 28th day of the Hebrew month of Av in the year 5781. In our faith, presenting a eulogy is considered one of the greatest mitzvot, good deeds that we can do. And the reason for that is the person that we are honoring is not here to thank us. We are very fortunate today. There are 4 people who have come forward to talk to us about Bernie who knew him. And they are Marty Tatman, Roberta Kravitz, Chris Miles, and Michael Cowles. So if I can have all 4 of you here, I understand, Marty, you're the first one to speak. So come right up to the mic. Step right up. I think I'd rather speak to the crowd.
First, can I ask you all to move a little closer? It's hard to hear. Before I begin, I want to acknowledge on behalf of Barb and Emma the planning and the hard work of Sherry Narvey and my partner Laurel Harris for bringing comfort to Bernie in his last days, and for their help in planning this day and the Shiva to follow. Bernie died at home as he wanted in the early morning hours of Friday, August 6th, 2021. From the earliest time, Bernie's life was touched by tragedy. His mother, Esther Narvey of blessed memory, died suddenly and unexpectedly in her sleep at age 50 in 1967. She had not been sick. There was no warning or time to prepare the children. Bernie and Sandy were 11. Their mother tucked them in at night, gave them a kiss, and then they never saw her again. Roberta was already living in New York with her husband Fred. Carol had moved into Winnipeg. So Sandy and Bernie were left alone to be raised by their shell-shocked and despondent father. I knew Bernie almost all of his life. We became brothers when my mother and Bernie's dad, both widowed, married in 1969. Bernie and Sandy were 12. When Sookie, my mother, came into Bernie's life, Bernie was immediately accepting, open, and loving. Sookie's first job was to plan Bernie and Sandy's joint bar and bat mitzvahs. Bernie was asked whether he wanted his bar mitzvah before or after Mel and Sookie married. After was Bernie's answer, so I can have a mother there. Bernie's acceptance of Sookie as his second mother in no way detracted from his sense of loss of his own. This was the first time I saw Bernie demonstrate what we came to know as the Mel Narvey personality. Stoicism in the face of tragedy, joy in being surrounded by family. And Bernie was his father's son. In a remarkable genetic quirk, both were born without the deception gene. There was no guile in Bernie. I do believe he was incapable of dishonesty or deception. In his business and in his life, everyone knew that his word was his bond, and we're talking about the movie business after all. Like Mel, Bernie was stoic in the face of adversity. When Sandy died in 2006 at age 50, Bernie was understandably devastated. There is a special bond between twins that some say begins in the womb. So Sandy's loss was especially poignant for him. Bernie never complained, except maybe to Barb, about the inherent unfairness. Like Mel, he took the blows and moved forward. One can only imagine the shock and devastation felt by Bernie when, at age 63, stop for a minute, at age 63, he received his diagnosis, stage 4 metastatic cancer. Bernie was dying and he knew it. True to form, Bernie did not take a break or a moment to feel sorry for himself. Immediately with Barb, he began the process of surveying his options and planning for the eventualities of his future. Bernie's last gift to his family and to all of us was a lesson on how to die with courage, with dignity, and with grace. For Bernie, love of family was at the center of his being. Everything else was detail. The movie business, the study of astronomy, his love of the folk festival, and of music generally. That's what Bernie did. His love for Barb and Emma, for his siblings, and for his cousin Bruce, who was born a cousin but became Bernie's brother in every sense of the word, that was who Bernie was. Bernie earned the affection and respect of everyone with whom he came into contact. Bernie learned his father's lessons well, and he lived them. For Bernie, there was no greater accolade than you are your father's son. Barb told me that in the last weeks she would often say to Bernie, "You are your father's son," and that, almost invariably, brought tears to his eyes. It was critically important to Bernie to measure up to Mel's standard, and he did, marvelously. Bernie, you made your dad proud. Bernie worked in the movie industry all of his adult life. When production companies considered shooting in Manitoba, they retained Bernie to scout out locations for the scenes. He was the go-to guy for almost every film shot in Manitoba. I did not know, and there's lots I didn't know about Bernie. I did not know that although his official title was usually locations manager, he was a strong advocate for the movie business generally. Single-handedly, Bernie persuaded the provincial government to amend legislation to make this province more production-friendly. In no small measure, quietly, the growth of the movie industry in Manitoba and its benefits to the provincial economy were attributable to Bernie's work. Bernie rubbed shoulders with some of the biggest movie stars in Hollywood. Robin Williams, Brad Pitt, and Bob Odenkirk, to name a few. But celebrity didn't impress Bernie. What did impress Bernie was Menschlichkeit, innate decency. When a star was courteous and kind and respectful of others, irrespective of their stations, Bernie was impressed. Otherwise, Bernie was indifferent to stardom. Bernie's indifference to celebrity, coupled with his encouragement, kindness, and decency for those with whom he worked, earned him the unmitigated respect of his peers. You'll hear about that in greater detail a little later. Can you imagine how many times Bernie was asked, what's this person really like, and what's that person really like? But unless you pried it out of him, Bernie was quiet. He was never interested in dropping names, although he had names to drop. I did not know that a production company commissioned Bernie to write a screenplay. He did, and they bought it. I didn't know that. I did not know that Bernie wrote and published a book of poetry. I did not know that Bernie had a passion for astronomy and voraciously read books on astronomy. Most of us watch Neil deGrasse Tyson on TV and struggle to understand what in the world he's saying. Bernie actually read his books. Barb tells me that Bernie would occasionally take a break from astronomy to read literature. Barb relates that he had an appreciation for broad and diverse fiction, as long as it was written by Michael Ondaatje. But I never heard Bernie talk about astronomy. He had no inner need to demonstrate his knowledge or to impress anyone with his intelligence. Everyone here today knows at least one person who always has to show us who the smartest person in the room is. That wasn't Bernie. He was the quiet person in the room. He was sufficiently comfortable in his own skin that he never felt the need to show off his knowledge or his intelligence. Everyone knew facets of Bernie. I do believe no one really knew all of Bernie except Barb and Emma. And Emma, there were parts of your dad that only your mom knew. They were friends and they were lovers, and you weren't usually around for the second part. But here's some things that I do know about Bernie. Bernie was a feminist. I don't think he knew he was a feminist until Barb told him he was. But intuitively, and without calling his belief system feminism or any other ism, Bernie believed in full social, economic, and political equity for all people, irrespective of sex, gender, race, sexual orientation, ability, or age. Without calling it feminism, this fair and just way of being in the world was inescapable and self-evident to him. Bernie could not have imagined treating others, including his wife and daughter, any other way. And Barb and Emma were so proud and in love with him for that. That's who he was. Sandy, Bernie's twin, and Arthur, my bio brother, both faced life with challenges. Bernie appointed himself their guardian angel. He looked out for them, he watched over them, he made sure if they ever needed help, and they did, he was there to give it. No one asked him to do it. They were family, and so they lived in his heart. Bernie stayed close to both of his older sisters, although both had departed Portage by the time he was 11. Both Carol and Roberta and Fred have endured misfortune and misery. When Larry, Carol's husband, with whom Bernie was close, was sick, Bernie stayed strong for Carol and supported her throughout Larry's illness and afterward.
Did someone call the ambulance? Have they? Somebody collapsed. No, it's okay. They're looking after it. I just want to make sure that someone has done it. Okay, continue.
Apparently somebody at the back has collapsed and is being attended to. The great recurring theme in Bernie's life was his love of family. For Bernie, the words family and love were synonyms. We should all be so lucky. Barb and Bernie always seemed like the marriage partners in Khalil Gibran's The Prophet. Not two branches of the same tree, but rather two strong and independent trees standing side by side, sharing their resources and providing shade and sustenance to each other. But it wasn't always that way. Get ready. Their history was a classic rom-com. Boy meets girl, boy loses girl, boy gets girl, and they live happily ever after. And I want you all to know up front that Barb has given me permission to tell this story. Barb and Bernie met and began dating in 1982, when Bernie and Barb were both 25 years old. Barb knew immediately that Bernie was Mr. Right. What was wrong was the timing. Barb had goals and aspirations and wanted to see the world a bit, and that had to be done before she was ready to settle down. They dated for a solid year into 1983, and Bernie fell head over heels. How could he not? And then Barb dumped him. Bernie was left reeling, devastated, depressed. And then Bernie did what Bernie did. He picked himself up, put one foot in front of the other, and got on with his life. Bernie and Barb each became involved with others. And this is where we cut and move to Act 2. It's 1993, 10 years later, a sunny Sunday afternoon. Barb is at McNally Robinson, checking out books, when she looks up, and there across the way, she spots Bernie. Totally coincidentally. Barb saw Bernie before he saw her. As Barb tells it, she panicked and ducked behind the shelving so Bernie wouldn't see her. But he did, and he came over to say hello. They got to talking, one thing led to another, and you know. They were engaged within 2 weeks and married 4 months later, and that was 28 years ago. So Bernie and Barb found each other again and never looked back. Maybe because they came so close to missing each other, they both appreciated what they so nearly lost, and that made their love and their commitment to each other so tight and so strong. Bernie worshipped Barb. Her integrity, her intelligence, her unwavering love and support for him, her intuitive and supportive nurturing of Emma. Barb shared the values Bernie held dear, and together they made a home filled with love, respect, and feminist values, and a daughter, and a dog. Emma was born in late 1997. From the moment Emma came into their lives, Bernie was made whole. He was complete. Finally, he had the riches he had always wanted: a loving wife, a beautiful and fantastic daughter, and a harmonious home. That was Bernie. And what kind of father was Bernie? I asked Emma that question, and Emma sent me a story that I will now tell you, but it's Emma's story in Emma's words. This is Emma. Once when I was a kid in kindergarten, about 5 years old, my dad dropped me off at daycare as he did every morning. And every single morning he gave me a hug and a kiss. But this morning, I suppose he was in a hurry to get important things done at work. Maybe it was a stressful day with lots of problems, and he forgot to give me a hug and a kiss before he dropped me off. He drove all the way downtown to wherever his movie office was at the time. It's always in a different place, says Emma, depending on the movie. Once when an adult asked me where my dad worked, I responded, in the middle of the street on Portage and Main, because that was the last place I had seen them shooting the movie. Anyways, he drove probably 30 minutes in rush hour traffic to get downtown, but as soon as he pulled into work, he realized what he had forgotten to do. Turned around and drove all the way back, 30 minutes in rush hour traffic again, back to Sunnyside Daycare. When he pulled up, he saw me waiting, looking out the circular window longingly, and then, to my astonishment, he was back. I remember sitting in the window that day before he came back, sitting there like a sad puddle, unable to play. So he came back in, gave me one kiss, one hug, and everything was right in the world for both of us again. He then proceeded to drive back to work again, 30 minutes in rush hour traffic to get to work. And then I was at ease to go play with my friends again. When in the middle of COVID, Emma told her father that she was going to Brazil because her place was with her partner Mariana, Bernie and Barb were, of course, fearful for her safety and her security. But Bernie's words, and I'm paraphrasing, were, "Do what you gotta do, baby. Your mom and I will support you always in all your dreams and all your aspirations." And that was Bernie. His family's well-being and happiness came first, invariably and always. Rest easy, Bernie. You have laid out a path for the rest of us to follow. May we all be worthy of your memory. You are loved and you will be missed.
Thank you so much. I just want to make sure that we acknowledge those of you who are watching us on YouTube, so there are cameras over there. So thank you all for joining us as well. So I understand, Roberta, you're next.
Bernie was a sweet, adorable baby, a sweet and adorable little boy, and a sweet, adorable and adventuresome bigger boy. Drag racing on one occasion on Crescent Road, which our house in Portage was on, and getting pulled over for it. He was bursting with energy, a skinny little kid who loved to run and jump and do cannonballs into the swimming pool. Two little stories. When Carol returned home from Europe after being away for a year, She wondered who the tall young man with the deep voice was in the house, and was so surprised to learn it was Bernie. One of my recollections of Bernie as a young teen was of him being a good boy and doing his chores. Yes, he was, and doing his chores. One of his chores was throwing out the garbage. We were there one winter with our 3 young children. Guess where we put their snowsuits to keep them out of the way? In a large trash bag. Bernie, Fred, and I drove to the dump and searched, but to no avail. I teased him about it recently, and we laughed. Bernie has always been kind and caring, and blessed us all by his devotion and caring for his twin sister Sandy and our father Mel when they were ill. Bernie's career in the film industry and early start as a writer spilled over into his interviewing our father, who happily shared his stories and family history, which Bernie shared with us. He also enjoyed researching family genealogy along with many family members, which is a treasure to all. Bernie waited to reunite with his Beshert, which has several meanings in this case: preordained, soulmate, inevitable, the one he was always meant to be with, the true love of his life, his beautiful Barb. Then they were blessed with the arrival of their darling daughter Emma, who completed their precious family. They all considered themselves blessed, and they were. Bernie remained sweet, kind, loving, and appreciative, grateful for the love of family and friends. His memory will be a blessing.
Thank you so much for those lovely words. Meaningful as well. Chris is next.
Good morning. Can you hear me in the back? All right. My name is Chris Miles, and I love Bernie. Sorry, this is a really emotional day. I love to miss my brother because he is the closest friend and the longest friend that I have known in my life. I have had the privilege of knowing Bernie and his family for more than 50 years. That makes me and all of us here probably a little older than we want to be. I first met Bernie in August of 1970. I had moved to Portage la Prairie with my mom and my dad and my grandmother from Saskatoon, and we knew no one. Bernie was my next door neighbor. As a couple of 14-year-old boys, we found common ground soon enough. We both had parents who strove to keep us on the right path through a bit of discipline and a few ground rules. And we shared the belief, inaccurate and fairly absurd as it was, in retrospect, that we were somehow terribly misunderstood and underprivileged. Together, as best friends, we discovered some really great music. After all, the summer of 1970 was the summer of Led Zeppelin and the Guess Who and Crosby, Stills, Nash & Young, and many others. We shared an interest in astronomy, although admittedly, this was more Bernie than I. His enthusiasm for the subject was impressive, and we once spent an entire night with binoculars and a telescope on the Narvey's house, on their garage roof, watching the Perseid meteor shower. Don't ask me why we climbed up on the roof. It seemed like a thing to do. Heighten the drama, you might say. We also both loved to write creatively. Yes, we wrote and we shared poems and short stories. Perhaps an odd pursuit for a couple of 14-year-old boys, but that's what we did. And we critiqued each other's writing. We shared an interest in history and U.S. politics and current events. We were both locked in the summer of Watergate, Oh, and movies. We both loved watching movies. I can tell you that Bernie was dearly loved by his father, Mel, and by his mom, Esther, who passed away when he was only 12 or 11. How hard that must have been for him. And then by his stepmom, Sookie, who I knew. I remember being amazed by Mel and Sookie, who would challenge, chastise, encourage, lecture, and debate. Oh, the debates. They were so much fun to observe. And especially, they never stopped engaging with him as their son. There was so much loving guidance, liberally rained down, applied to both Bernie and his twin Sandra, that there was some extra splashing around, and as the neighbor boy, I got the benefit of some of that guidance as well. I won't bore you with all the stories of our youth. I have wonderful memories, though, of Bernie and myself in high school and later in university. And of course, in university, we had to be roommates in our undergraduate years, and some of you may remember the big old Edwardian house on Oakwood Avenue in Riverview that we shared. Together, we hosted quite a few house parties, and we started a bicycle club, of all things, and that still exists to this day. We had some interesting and extraordinary roommates that we added to the mix because the house had a lot of bedrooms, and we had to pay the rent. Back then, we were so cash poor that we learned to cook communal one-pot meals, like baked beans and stews and soups. Bernie always had an interesting palate, and he loved making beet borscht, which was really, really good. It made me a lifelong lover of beet borscht to this day. It was so good that we had labels made for the jars. Bernie's beet borscht. It's got chutzpah. He loved making chopped liver as well, and if there were a jar of pickles in the fridge, the brine was always left for Bernie. Pickle brine was his thing. I have to out him. It seems ironic to me now that we were always so stressed about money and classes and the drama of life generally, when actually, as young men in our early 20s, we had so much to be thankful for and to celebrate. Perhaps it is true that youth is wasted on the young. Still, there were many blessings. One of those blessings for Bernie, and for me as well, was to meet Barb. She came into Bernie's life for a few months back then and rocked his romantic world, as you heard Marty tell. Bernie fell in love. Then she left to go live in the UK for an indeterminate period of time, and life went on a little sadder. I was the wingman that winter, so I'm familiar with that of which Marty speaks. Shortly after, I moved away to another city, and Bernie followed his chosen career path in the film production industry. Bernie loved film. And just a quick look at his CV and the IMDb.com database shows his work with more than 50 different major film projects from 1985 right up to his illness. By the early 1990s, Bernie had reunited with his love Barb, and I remember their very happy wedding. And of course, I remember and shared their excitement and joy when Emma came into their lives. We only lived a few blocks away, and so it was great that Bernie lived close by, and we were able to share a lot of things that were going on at that time. Emma was still in a car seat. Maybe she was 3 or 4 years old. And Bernie picked me up on a wintry weekend morning for an expedition to Canadian Tire, as I recall. He had taught Emma his word of the day, which on that particular Saturday morning was loquacious. Hearing Emma responding with the word of the day whenever he asked her was beyond memorable. and super cute. Loquacious. Bernie was like that with everything in life. He saw the complexities of it, he understood those complexities and nuances, and then he would juxtapose them to his own usually pretty humorous and always unique perspective. With the word of the day thing, for example, Bernie probably thought that children must learn to speak, so why not celebrate that fact while they do it? Bernie always made things fun. The Perseid meteor showers are occurring right now. They do every summer around this time. So keep an eye out. I will miss you, my old friend. Rest in peace. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And now we have Michael Cowles who come up and speak. So Michael, take your time. Take your time.
Yeah, thanks. Bernie has been a key figure in the film industry for close to 40 years. As a location manager, he was the face of the film community. From knocking on doors and asking to take photographs of people's homes, to working with the city closing down Portage and Maine for overnight car stamps, to helping shape the policies and practices of how we work in the industry. His credo was respect and integrity. I first worked with Bernie almost 25 years ago. I walked in off the street into an assistant location manager role with him on my first ever movie. Like those before me and many after me, Bernie took time to teach me the principles of the job. He took time to show us all the tools and techniques necessary to be efficient and effective. He instilled in us a respect of the community and how the job was never done until each location owner was satisfied. He was a mentor, a colleague, and most of all, a friend to many people. He was a storyteller, sometimes the same story, but they all made us smile. He showed us that by respecting the community, we learned how to respect ourselves. He showed us that through diligence and perseverance, we learned how to rise above challenges. Through his humor and by his generosity to others, we all learned not to take ourselves too seriously. And finally, through his courage, we have learned how to embrace and enjoy all that we have around us. Bernie will be forever missed. However, his legacy within the film community will endure. He helped create a new generation of location managers, assistant managers, and crew members. In the future, some will never have met him, but the ethics and responsibilities he instilled in those who will now carry the torch will burn bright for future generations. On behalf of the community, we thank you, Bernie, for your hard work and being part of it. We miss you.
I wasn't sure I was going to be able to do this, but because of all the great speakers, I am. And I'm going to give Bernie the last word. Well, I'm going to give Emma the last word. You've heard of Bernie's love of astronomy, and he's a deeply, deeply conscious man who loved his Jewish faith and explored his relationship with a God. And I'm going to end with two quotes, and it's from Our Friends Will Know the Whole Shebang, State of the Universe Report. A quote by Eckhart Tolle, although Bernie attributes the core of this idea to John Milton, who he studied. You are not in the universe. You are the universe, an intense part of it. Ultimately, you are not a person, but a focal point where the universe is becoming conscious of itself. What an amazing miracle. He believed that. He lived that. And then in chapter 12, it's called A Place for Us, a Jewish, it says traditional Jewish tale. God said to Abraham, "But for me, you would not be here." "I know that, Lord," Abraham answered. "But were I not here, there would be no one to think about you."
Hi, everyone. I think my fear of public speaking right now is going to trump my tears, so that's nice. So I just wrote this morning. Yeah, my thing kind of complements what my mom just said. My dad would always tell me that we come from the stars, and when a star goes supernova, that's like where your molecules are made. And he loved astronomy. And he wasn't afraid of the vast mystery of everything, which was crazy. Sometimes I would go into the living room at night and he was watching like a documentary of a black hole, like what a black hole is, and I was like, "Dad, how can you watch this before bed?" And he was like, "It's comforting, like it's relaxing." So now his soul has gone back into the great mystery of the universe and back into stardust, and I think he'd be really proud of that, becoming part of that again. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone, for those wonderful words. I want to ask again, what was that word that he taught her when she was 4 years old? Loquacious. When did you find out what that meant? I was gonna... What she said she can't remember, and she doesn't know what it means now. But she could pronounce it when she was 4 years old. You know what? I've read this many, many times, what you're going to hear. But never before has it really applied to who we're talking about. So, Bernie Narvey should illuminate the inner heavens of our lives. May all the qualities of his being find their way into our own minds and our hearts and our souls, so that we might learn to think, feel, and be on the highest possible level. If we are able to accomplish this, then we have accomplished a lot, because we will have made it possible for Bernie to live on in this world through us, through our deeds and achievements for all the future generations of his family and friends and acquaintances. They really do apply to Bernie. I was going to end with a small little story. I was a little boy, very precocious, challenging my faith back in Eastern Europe where I was born. And my dad noticed this, so he took me aside and he told me a little story. He said, "You know, when I was young, I had the same questions you did, and I had the same arguments with my parents. But a rabbi told me a little story. In the small Jewish communities in Eastern Europe, they were very isolated. There was a kind of community event that took place, and the discussion came amongst those who were of the clergy. Here are two examples. Which is the better person? Which is the better, in those little communities, which is the better Jew?" And that person would earn the title of a Giter Yid, a good Jew, by their actions. So you had one example, someone extremely pious, observed the Sabbath, ate only kosher food, went to synagogue 3 times a day, prayed whatever he could. Yes, he made a living, sort of, looked after his family, kind of, but his most important thing was making sure that he lived by the letter of the faith. Example 1. Example 2, someone who attended synagogue more for social reasons, but if in that community someone needed something, he was there. If the community needed to organize around an event, he was there. He was the personality that I just heard described. And that person, after much discussion among the learned, was always chosen as the one who earned the title of a Giter Yid. Bernie has earned that title not only as a Giter Yid, but as an ultimate mensch. in a profession that is full of gigantic egos, he had none. He was able to manipulate, and I mean this in a positive sense, all these large egos to come to the same conclusion at the end. The production of a film. An outstanding man. Someone that I think the industry will remember him, and those of you who knew him will remember him, and those of you who heard about him today will remember him. He is worth emulating in our lives. The tradition is that we recite the memorial prayer, and many rabbis call this the phone call to the soul because the name is actually mentioned. I will recite it in Hebrew and then repeat it in English. We will follow that with the Morna Scottish. We'll do it together on slowly, honoring his name. El Malrachami Shochen Bamromi Hamatzeh Menocha Nachonat Tachat Kanfi Hashkinah B'mahalot Keroshimut Chorim Kezohar Harakia Maskeri Et Nishmat Yehuda Dov Ben Menachem Shimon ve'Esther Shalach Lalamo Baganim Temenuchato Hana Habal Harachamim Hastirech Betzete Kenofech Ololomim Utzror Bitzror Achemit Nishmato Adonai Hunachalato Ve'yanuach B'Shalom Al Mishkavo Ve'nomar Amen. Exalted, compassionate God, grant infinite rest in your sheltering presence, among the holy and the pure, to the soul of Bernie Narvey, who has gone to his eternal home. Merciful One, we ask that our loved one find perfect peace in your eternal embrace. May his soul be bound up in the bond of life. May he rest in peace. And let us all say, Amen. I'd like to invite the family now to recite the Morna Scottish with me. We will do it very slowly, so those of you who are familiar can respond or say Amen in the right places. So let's just follow me together, okay? Itkada ve'itkadash shemei Rabbah be'alma divrach hirutei ve'amlich malchutei b'chayechon uvyomechon ub'chayei l'chol Beit Israel ba'agala uvizman kariv vimru Amen. Yahei Shmei Rabbah Mavorach Leolam Ulalmei Almaya Itbarach Ve'ishtabach Ve'itboar Ve'itramam Ve'itnaseh Ve'ithadar Ve'itale Ve'ithalal Shmei Dekurisha Brichu La'ela Min Kol Bichata Ve'shirata Tush Bechata Ve'nechemata Da'amiran be'alma v'imru Amen. Yehei shlama Rabbah min Shemaya v'chaim aleinu ve'al kol Israel v'imru Amen. Oseh shalom bimramav hu ya'aseh shalom aleinu ve'al kol Israel v'imru Amen. On behalf of everyone that's here and those who are watching us on the internet, let us share the following words with the family. Hamalkom minachem, etchem b'toch she'ar, evilit Zion v'Yerushalayim. May God comfort you and all who have mourned for Zion and Jerusalem, and let us say, Amen. The final mitzvah, the final good deed that we can now accomplish. Now I'll ask the family to be the first ones to do this. It is our custom to begin to cover the grave. Not an easy one, not everyone can do that. So I'll invite the family to be the first ones to do it. The general custom is that we put 3 coverfuls of earth with the shovel on the casket, and then put the shovel back on the mound so the person behind you picks it up voluntarily. You don't want to turn, and maybe somebody who doesn't really feel comfortable doing it will do that. We'll invite the family to do it first, then we'll invite the pallbearers. But before we do that, I want to say farewell to those of you who are watching us on the internet. The camera will be turned off in just a moment. But in the meantime, I will invite the family to start. There's also some sand over there if you find the earth too heavy. And after the family has done it, just to take one of the shovels. The pallbearers can do that next. And anyone else who wishes to honor him by doing that, who can do it, is also invited to do that as well. So family, if you're